The Super Bowl hasn't even been played yet. We already have a blockbuster trade that will impact the next football season for 2021 between the Rams and the Lions, trading franchise quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford, now a member of the Los Angeles Rams, and Jared Goff, former number one pick, also now with the Lions starting over. What is the fantasy football impact of this deal, and who actually won this trade? All right, so Chris, before we get into the fantasy aspect specifically, who do you think just flat out won this deal? Because obviously Rams get their quarterback, but the Lions get a lot of draft picks.
I got to say the Lions won this trade. Not only do they get a number one pick each of the next 2 years, a third round pick this year, but they get Jared Goff. Not that Jared Goff is a huge prize, but the thing is, yeah, they're going to have to pay his contract, his huge contract this year, and probably roll with him this year, but that's okay. This is a team that's rebuilding. Next year, they can cut him if they want. They'll have another first-round pick. They got that third-rounder this year. I think this was a great trade for a Lions team that is obviously in a rebuild mode right now.
Yeah, the Lions did the smart thing. They obviously had to blow it up and rebuild because, let's just face it, even with Stafford, one of the most prolific passers the past several years, it wasn't working. New coach, yeah, that doesn't mean they're going to have instant success. They have some pieces around them, but already thin at wide receiver. Kenny Golladay, a free agent, probably not coming back. The defense was terrible. They had no choice. So getting those draft picks, I agree, was a smart move. It really depends on how you think, Stafford's going to do. And you think he was the missing piece to the puzzle. Is he going to take them to the Super Bowl? Is Stafford the guy? A lot of people will bring up the fact that Matthew Stafford has exactly 0 playoff wins in his career. What's going to be different now? I don't know. I honestly, from a fantasy perspective, I might have a different opinion, but in real life, I do think the Lions are going to come out ahead in the long term. Now, let's talk about each quarterback, because obviously with Stafford, he's always putting up big numbers, but he's always been in Detroit. And even though he has had a guy in Calvin Johnson for several years, and then now it's been Kenny Golladay, a mixture of other receivers, he hasn't really had the surrounding talent, offensive line, running back, and whatnot, as he will have probably with LA. Stafford, upgrade or just kind of more of the same?
Oh, this has got to be an upgrade for Matthew Stafford. He's going to go from one of those kind of fringy QB1 guys who you can play in the right matchup to probably an every week must start. Kind of similar to what we saw from Tom Brady this year, right? Tom Brady went from a situation where he had very little talent around him to a team in Tampa Bay who had 2 very good receivers. They brought in Rob Gronkowski. They brought in Antonio Brown, and he was almost an every week must start player at the quarterback position. And I think we're going to see something similar for Matthew Stafford next year, because he's got Robert Woods, he's got Cooper Kupp, he's got Cam Akers in the backfield, and he's got Sean McVay, who I still think is a pretty good offensive mind in the NFL, who's going to get the most out of him and this offense. So I think this is definitely an upgrade for Matthew Stafford from a fantasy perspective.
So here's where I'm going to differ a little bit, because I think Stafford will maybe be more efficient. I don't think from a fantasy perspective it's going to be any better for him. Jared Goff last year, not 2020, the year before, had led the league in pass attempts, and the Rams a lot of times have been a pass-first team, right, to set up the run, and especially once Todd Gurley became much less effective. So Jared Goff, last 4 years as a starter, averaging 554 pass attempts each season. Well, guess what? Matthew Stafford, not including the season where he was injured, he's averaged 575 pass attempts per season. So if anything, we should look that he might take a slight step down in volume. The Lions are really good at falling behind early, right? Their defense has been just atrocious. The Rams, the opposite. They have one of the best defenses in the league still. There's going to be a lot of times where Stafford isn't slinging the ball like he used to. I don't think that it's going to help him in terms of fantasy points, because again, he won't just need to pass that much. Might help them in more victories. Might help him, like I said, be a little bit more effective as a passer, having those receivers. But I feel like we're going to lose a lot of that garbage time. Now, Goff, it's probably going to be the opposite. At this point, the fact that they've pretty much given up on him, right? The relationship with Sean McVay is severed, and now Goff has been kind of exiled to Detroit. People are going to expect nothing. A lot of people expect Detroit to actually draft a quarterback. So first I want to ask you, do you think that Goff is the starter for sure in 2021? Do you think that the Lions draft a quarterback to try to replace him, or do you think they feel like he's actually going to be the guy going forward?
I do think he'll be the starter in 2021. I don't know if he'll finish as the starter in 2021. I could definitely see the Lions drafting a quarterback, maybe not with their early first round pick, but maybe later in the draft, draft a guy who they think is a bit of a project to sit under Goff. But if they get off to a terrible start, and we've seen this with other teams, right? If they start out 1-5, 0-7, 1-8, something like that, some terrible start, they'll just put the rookie in to see what they've got a lot of times. Because, again, they're not committed to Jared Goff past this season. Definitely think he will be the starter. Don't know if he'll finish the season. And, yeah, this is definitely a downgrade for Jared Goff, right? He's going to a team that's probably not going to have Kenny Golladay, probably not going to have Marvin Jones. Who knows if any free agent wide receivers are even going to want to go to Detroit now. So you could be looking at, Quintez Cephas and whatever other wide receivers they do or don't draft this year, or whatever free agents they pick up, with basically the scraps. So this is definitely a downgrade for Jared Goff. Pretty much probably not even going to be fantasy usable most weeks.
Yeah, I have to agree. Not just the fact that he's going to be a Lion instead of a Ram, but again, who is going to be the top receiver there? We really don't know. Like I said, Golladay, I don't see any chance that he's coming back. And not just because he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, but also think about the philosophy of this team. Dan Campbell, now the head coach, he basically wants to smash people in the mouth and rip their arms off and whatever else he said. He wants to bring back an old school mentality. They're not going to be running all these fancy designs like Sean McVay. They're not going to be trying to air the ball out. This is going to be a team that's going to probably rely a lot more on DeAndre Swift. And so I actually like Swift's value a lot better this coming season. Talk about using him as a slot receiver. I don't think they're too worried about who their receivers are at this point. I mean, it might be Quintez Cephas who's their top guy. They might draft somebody, who knows, but it's not going to be somebody who is anywhere near the level of those guys you mentioned, right? It's Golladay and Marvin Jones. As far as Goff, he's not going to have the weapons. He's not going to have the volume. There's not going to be the offensive creativity. So like you said, Goff, I agree. I mean, he's probably only going to be startable in 2 quarterback super flex formats. Now, as far as the Lions skill players, again, we don't know who's going to be their main receiver. What about a guy like TJ Hawkinson? Maybe he sees an uptick in value because Goff has to lean on him more. What do you see shaking out here?
I'm pretty low on all the Lions players now. The thing with TJ Hawkinson is if you look at the tight end usage in LA with Jared Goff, they never really had that, big tight end usage. I mean, I know Tyler Higbee had that 4 or 5 game stretch to end 2019, but then we saw in 2020 he was very inconsistent. Now, of course, they did have other weapons in LA outside of the tight end. I don't think what we saw from Hawkinson last year is gonna, I definitely don't think he's gonna exceed that. I'm not even sure if he'll match that. I just don't think he'll be utilized enough. And this offense as a whole, at least with Matthew Stafford, even when they fell behind, he could bring them back and put up 2 or 3 scores in the second half and get you those fantasy points. I don't know if that's going to happen in this offense now. I don't think Jared Goff is the type of player, when his team is down 2 or 3 scores, can get you a couple of garbage time touchdowns. I just don't think that's him. So I'm pretty low on this entire offense. Hawkinson, even Swift, I'm a little lower on now. Sure, they might lean on him more, but is he going to get a lot of scoring opportunities that he would have gotten with Stafford? So I just think this whole Lions offense has got to be downgraded.
Yeah, I agree about Hawkinson. Like I said, I don't see how downgrading a quarterback could help your value as a receiver in any way. So I think Hawkinson kind of stays static. I mean, he'll get a lot of usage just because, like I said, they don't have any other wide receivers that are going to get a ton of targets, at least not yet. And I don't think they're going to invest in one. But I don't see his value going up that much, if at all. Swift, I'm gonna still kind of hold to what I said. I think he gets a lot more usage than last year because, again, they were handcuffing him throughout the first half of the season. For some reason, Matt Patricia just hates running backs. But now DeAndre Swift will get freed. They're going to involve him a lot more as a pass catcher. So I do feel like Swift's value is going to go up just because of that, the sheer volume. I really have no interest in anybody else offensively for the Lions. Now, as far as the Rams, you've got to think this helps their receivers. Does it help a little? Does it help a lot? And do you feel like it's possible to value them anymore? Because Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods both kind of considered top 20 receivers. Is it possible that their value shoots up even more?
Certainly with Matthew Stafford, I think their value has to go up a little bit because Stafford is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. But at the same time, these, like you said, these are top 20 every week options, sometimes top 10 options at the position. So I don't see them, going up to like a top 5 or a every week top 10 at the wide receiver position. But I do think it helps their value. I think of one guy, if you want to get like a really sneaky receiver, maybe in Dynasty or, deep in best ball drafts, is Van Jefferson because he plays more of the deep guy in this offense. And we know Stafford, he'll connect with that deep guy, right? We saw it with Kenny Golladay. We saw it with Marvin Jones. We saw it with Calvin Johnson. he'll take those chances, and he can throw that deep ball. So I think if you're looking for like a sneaky guy who it really helps, it's Van Jefferson. Now, I'm not saying Van Jefferson is going to be, worth a draft in a 12-team typical fantasy football league, but if you're in a deeper league, or if you're looking for somebody to stash in Dynasty, or maybe to go buy low on, I think he's a guy. And then if we look at Cam Akers, I'm already pretty high on Cam Akers. I think this can only help him, right? Again, anytime the offense is going to move the ball more, anytime the defense has to respect the pass a little more, it helps the running game. He should get plenty of chances around the goal line. So wherever you were on Cam Akers, it's probably fine. Unless you were really low on him, then you need to get higher on him.
Well, I don't think it's possible for me to get any higher on Cam Akers. Anybody who's watched us throughout the season, Cam Akers was my guy, breakout pick from before the season even started. So definitely high on Akers. I definitely agree on Van Jefferson. They drafted him pretty high for a reason last year. Josh Reynolds just hasn't cut it as that third receiver, just too inconsistent. He'll show up and make a big play. And he knows toward the very end of the season, even despite that really soft defense that they were facing for 3 weeks in a row during the fantasy playoffs, Josh Reynolds just didn't show up. And you know what? He was losing snaps to Van Jefferson. Jefferson didn't get a ton of targets, but Reynolds kind of being phased out. You got to wonder if Jefferson really kind of takes that number 3 role. And I think he's a great sleeper pick. Definitely somebody to target in dynasty leagues, if at all possible. Although, of course, now with the Stafford news, it might be a little too late. His asking price is probably a little higher than you'd like, but you never know. I do agree it's got to be an upgrade for all the Rams. I can't upgrade Woods or Kupp too much more because, again, they're already ranked pretty high. Definitely those kind of more peripheral guys, it should boost them up. All right, so there you have it, all the impact of this trade. Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff. Will there be more big NFL trades made before the NFL draft? We will find out. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment. Let us know, what do you think? Who was the winner in this deal, and which players on either the Lions or the Rams are you keeping a closer eye on because of this? All right, thank you for watching.